Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Forward Thinking. It's Chrissy and Charlie here.
Hello.
And today we have a exciting guest. We have the king of MOPS memes with us here today, Jason Raisleger. And if you're in MOPS and you've been on LinkedIn, it's very safe to say that you maybe have seen one of Jason's memes. They're so relatable and they kind of take some of the things that are so, classic or just part of our world and flip it on its head and make it funny. So we thought it'd be great to have Jason on because one, we want to get to know the man behind the memes, but also go through some of his memes and kind of break them down. Because not only are they funny, but they definitely hit on a lot of like core topics for MOPS. So with that, Jason, welcome. And to kick it off, can you just tell our audience like a little bit about yourself and, how you got to where you are today?
Sure, definitely, and thank you for having me. So I've actually been working in MOPS, well, we weren't calling it that necessarily back in 2014. So
Mhm.
I'm obviously using Marketo now, but I actually started using Eloqua, and we switched about a year and a half later to Marketo. So that's really where my MOPS journey began, and it's been wonderful ever since. So I think in this past year is really where the MOPS memes has been born, and that's because sharing them on LinkedIn and found out that a lot of people seem to resonate with the thoughts that roll around in my mind. So it's really been a lot of fun to be creating those this year.
Yeah. So where did you create memes, non-mops memes before mops memes, or did you see just this opportunity and just dive right into the meme culture?
No, that's really funny. So actually, I've been doing memes for like a long time. So I have this whole folder of formats and templates that I can kind of pick from. So I used to have just some Facebook pages, some like local um, Facebook pages that I had. So I've been creating memes probably since 2017, and it's one of those things I never thought they would actually work on LinkedIn, but lo and behold, they seem to really work. And I think, especially when you see a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, it seems like the shorter content seems to do quite a bit better. Something that you can look at and kind of digest in under 5 seconds, I think, is best from what I can tell.
Totally.
Yeah. I still remember the first time I found out what a meme was actually while I was working at Marketo and in
A meme?
2010. Yeah. And I think someone was like, a meme. And I was like, what's a meme? And then we all just like, were just laughing. And I was just like, wait, this is a thing.
Mhm.
And even then we're like, how can we put some memes in our marketing? And we would just send each other emails, or when we do set up like op alerts or something
Yeah,
like that, we started to put them in it and be fun with it. So um I think now still holding strong and
yeah.
great content for LinkedIn as people scroll through, I think, for sure.
Well, and I just think it's funny how a singular picture can be so relatable across industries and topics. It's just so funny. I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio has a bunch of memes that with his
Hmm.
format. So it's just funny how you can take these and make it apply to whatever business you're doing. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we were talking before. I've said this to you before, but I feel like it is an art form because yeah, there's an image, and you're having to really think through like what is this concept or what
Yeah,
is this something relatable in mops, and then apply that to the image, and then and then just trigger that instant reaction from someone like, yeah, I totally get it, like.
yeah,
And obviously I feel like if I tried, people would be like, what, that doesn't make any sense, like. But it sounds like you've been practicing this for a long time and just like you're able to just absolutely nail it.
yeah.
um so before, like when you first started in mops, was that an in-house role, you said, when you were
Yep.
working with Eloqua?
Yeah, so I was in-house for I think 5 years. So it's only been in the past year and a half that
Hmm.
now on the agency side. So yeah, it's a big difference between the two. So and like anything, they both have their pluses, they both have their minuses. So it's nice to have that exposure, though. I feel like when I am consulting now, I can actually put myself in the seat of someone who worked in house because you kind of understand where they're coming from much better.
Oh,
Totally.
totally. Yeah, we talk about that a lot. Yeah, having that empathy for people in house, right? Because if you go straight into agency, you don't really, you think it's easier to get things done in house than maybe it is, you know? And
Yep.
so, like, but when you're
Yep.
in house, you realize, oh, there's politics and there's other people
Hmm.
we've got to like work things through. And then I'm completely maxed out, like, and I
Yeah.
don't have any time to really take on anything else. So, yeah, I think
Mhm.
it
Well,
really is important for people in agencies to understand the in-house experience.
yeah. One of the memes that we aren't sharing today, but is the one, I don't know if you've ever seen it, where it's like a little block that falls into like this big block, and the guy is setting it at the beginning, and on that side you're saying, I just need to run this by legal, and then the final block is a whole new marketing campaign. So I think that happens a lot, where you put a lot of thought into these executions only to have it your dreams dashed at the last second. So very relatable to the in-house people for sure.
So then, one of the other things that we've talked about with you, and we've been following from you, is you ended up starting a discipline of writing every day, or being more consistent. I know it's kind of been
Hmm.
up and down recently, but like
Sure.
you at one point you said you were just going to write every day on kind of MOPS related topics, and that's something we've talked about. We believe is important for MOPS people to try and kind of formulate their thoughts through content. I'd love to learn a bit more about your experience.
Sure. And so I've been keeping track of these different content ideas. I actually started my blog back in 2012 and have hardly written on it. I think I only have just over 100 blog posts published in that 8-year time. So if you do the math, that's not a whole lot of posts per year. But starting at the end of August, I started publishing every day, and I went up to about uh, late or early to mid October, and kind of has trailed off in the past couple of weeks. But yeah, I basically had all these ideas. I put it in Airtable, and I kind of, anytime I get a thought, I just put it in there, and I'll put some notes, and then one day I'll just kind of be inspired, and I'll all of a sudden I'll have this stream of thoughts come through, and lo and behold, I'll have a post at the end of it. So the part that I find most beneficial is as you're writing, and we were talking about this, um, is it makes you think about it from different point of views, and if you can word things in a different way, because sometimes in my first draft I'll read through and I'll be like, well, that's really not clear. So then you go through and you edit yourself, which I really think is actually the fun part about writing, is the editing and kind of moving around different content pieces. I find that um, to try to be able to draw your ideas together. So, and actually my blog posts aren't always on MOP. Sometimes they're just on careers and just different topics. So I think I actually don't have it right offhand, but I think the tagline for my site is "Thoughts of a Creator, Marketer, and Human," something along those
Hmm.
lines. Because in the past, I did try to have my writing just be on one topic, and that just didn't work for me because I have too many different ideas. So not great from like a branding perspective, because it's kind of all over the place. But I think just from daily growth perspective, it's really helpful.
Yeah. I think also that I think it can help you from a communication standpoint, like verbally too. I think once you're able to really get your thoughts down on paper, and I think it's that mental exercise of just thinking through, what are my thoughts on this? How do I consolidate them? I since I was postpartum, I've actually every single day since January 3rd this year, I've been journaling every night. And I'm very proud of that. But
Yeah,
I want to continue to do it. And I think that's helped me kind of think about things, like really articulate them. But then even when I'm just in a conversation with Charlie or someone else, I can actually then, deduce that down to what my thoughts are and really communicate them back. And it is something that once you get into a habit can help you in your email writing,
absolutely.
giving people directions on how to do something, just constantly figuring out how to gather your thoughts, but then also edit yourself, like you said.
Well, exactly. And you just hit on something really important there, is like once you write it, then right, it gets like stuck in your memory bank, and you, when you have a conversation, it's like all set to go because you already spent time writing about
Hmm.
it. So yeah, I just think it's so wonderful. That's a great thing you've been doing. Very admirable. I wish, like I said, I'd love to get back into writing because I think it's therapeutic.
What's your writing style? Do you just write it out, just kind of like a real, like, kind of quick and dirty V1, and then go back and edit? It sounded like maybe that might be it, or do you kind of write parts and edit them as you go? Do you have a technique?
I have like bullet point lists of ideas, and I kind of add content under it, and then I'll take like whole sections and kind of move them around. So
Hmm.
kind of around the main idea points. And usually, like my writing is um, it's like 3 paragraphs. It's not long. In fact, someone that I really, well, 2 people that I really like. Obviously, most people know Seth Godin, and I'm not
Hmm.
sure how popular Derek Sivers is, but he's like one of my favorites. Where I mean, his blog posts aren't more than 3 paragraphs, most of the time shorter. And I really like that, because I think one of the things in marketing overall is we have this idea that posts have to be a certain length. And one of the things
Hmm.
that I really try to focus on is impact instead of length. So um, again, usually it's 3 paragraphs, but it doesn't have to be. So kind of a long-winded answer of how I structure my content.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, if you're doing it every day, you can be very precise about what you're trying
Yep.
to explain and just get that bit done. And then if
Yep.
you have to expand on that, that can just be another post, right? And I think Seth
Exactly.
Godin writes every day, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Is
And
that
he's
where you
been, I
got the
mean,
idea from?
well, him and Derek Sivers, and
And
they're actually close, not related in a family sense, but closely related. Um, Seth Godin asked Derek Sivers to write his first book, so they're very
Mm.
I think have a very similar mindset. And Bernadette, I think her last name is Jiwa, Jiwa, very similar to, again, another kind of Seth Godin disciple, and she writes on marketing. So those are like my 3 really people of inspiration. And yeah, to your point, I mean, we're digital here, so we can write a little bit and then expand on it on another post, and link back and forth if we need to. So to me, I think it's really important to just get those bits out there. You can always expand on it later.
do you have a what did you do at college? Do you have like a writing background or like an
No,
English? Nothing like
no,
that.
no, not at all. Just, it's always been a hobby of mine. Even as a kid, I like writing songs. So I've just like writing in general. It's always been a fun hobby. So yeah, so if you go through my blog post, there's probably a lot of grammatical errors and that type of thing, and incorrect word usage. But actually, it's funny though, because one of my latest blog posts was just about 7 perfect words for marketers to use, because I just love words. um, Words that we don't traditionally use. So that was a really fun post to write, because sometimes I'll just go through like dictionary.com or Merriam-Webster or whatever it is, and just find new words that can be much more succinct. And sometimes uh, there's a perfect use for a word instead of something that might be used over and over again. So for instance, we use the word amazing a lot, and it's kind of lost all meaning. So trying to find a word that might be a little bit more suitable.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
That hits
Yeah.
that
I
hits
use that
hard. I
word
use
way too
that
much.
I know, I use it.
Everyone, so do I.
I think I
What was
found
the
myself writing
word?
like amazing twice in a paragraph the other day, and I was like, "Whoa, I
Yeah.
need more
So what
words."
is the word? What's the replacement for amazing then? Can you remember?
And I don't know if I did that one in particular. So I just want to. It's funny because obviously I don't even remember the words I use. But so here's one where inculcate, which is to teach or impress by frequent repetitions or admonitions. I can't even speak, but it's saying that's something we do in marketing, right? We try to do this repetitive message to really um,
Hmm.
burn that in someone's memory. So that would be a perfect word to use. We have um, promulgate, which is to make an idea known to many people by an open declaration. So again, I just think there's these words that I should be using more, so I can recall them more easily than having to look them up. But I'm
Yeah.
fascinated by words. So um, that's another great point of writing. In fact, sometimes even as a creativity exercise, I'll do that where I'll find a word that I've never used before or use very little, and try to work that into my writing. And from that, um, you can spark a whole bunch of new ideas. So
Yeah.
So have you found that, because obviously MOPS is a technical role, have you found that it just brings balance to just your brain and your just ability to kind of just flex that other muscle that maybe, I know you're using
it,
creativity within the technical side, but it's kind of a different type of creativity.
kind of like the art and science balance, right? Where you're one in one, there's a very definite right way and wrong way to do something. I mean, there might be multiple right ways to do it, but either a campaign is going to execute or it's not based on whatever filters you put in place, where writing is a little bit more open-minded. So
Mhm.
yeah, it is a really nice balance, and uh, something that we just talked about. But I think writing also makes you simplify things, because I think in MOPS you can make things really complicated too, and writing is a great way to filter that back down to make it really relatable.
Yeah, one of the things actually I found when, and I can kind of apply all of the stuff we've talked about to any form of content, right? It could be speaking on a podcast, it could be, say verbal or written or anything. Is that so much in marketing operations, especially when you work on the agency side, like all of us. It's all, the answer is like always it
Like
depends,
all of
right?
us.
Yeah, yeah, like not all the listeners, obviously, but the answer is always it depends, because it always does depend, right? Like it always depends on multiple factors on what
Yep.
the answer should be, and like it sometimes often like seems too simplistic to just be like this is the right way to do
Yep.
it. But I found that it's forced me to take some position somewhere where maybe in the past I was always it depends, because
Hmm.
as I was writing about it or as I was like really thinking about it, I would always kind of run it through the mental test of like, if this was if it was me, like if I was running the company that I'm consulting for, like what would I do in that situation, or like what would I do in general? So it's forced me to really think through where do I actually have like this is the right way to do it. And
Hmm.
yes, of course it always does depend, but
Mhm.
I'm going to try and push our clients towards this. um
100%.
yeah, so that's been kind of an interesting side of our content I found.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one of the interesting things that you said about grammatical errors and everything like that, and it reminds me and Charlie have been going back and forth on this, because I was always very into writing. I did a minor in English in college, and I studied business, and I'm like a grammar kind of, I've always been like a stickler for grammar and everything.
And I'm the opposite.
And Charlie's the opposite. And we've had
I
to
break all the rules, not on purpose, by accident.
yeah, but now with the rise of conversational marketing, like I've had to really sometimes sacrifice what I think is perfect grammar to something that is, or using big words or very like, descriptive language, and really just trim it down to something that people want to read and
Yeah.
can easily read. And so that's been a learning experience for me, but it's like finding that middle ground, because I do
Yep.
think, to your point, like being really eloquent and concise and using the right words is super important. But also creating content that people can easily read, because they're
Yeah.
everyone's so trained to like you know read their friends posts on LinkedIn or
Yep.
Instagram or Facebook, and no one's winning Pulitzer prizes for like
Yep.
that. So you need to adjust, and we're always kind of reminding our clients about that as they're creating their content.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yep. And one of the things too is, I said this kind of at the beginning, but like on LinkedIn, I've tried like putting out really thoughtful, deep content, and it just doesn't work for me, at least on that platform. And I think your point is, you need to be much more concise, and have them be able to understand it in a very quick amount of time. So yeah, it's probably changed writing for quite a few people.
Totally, yeah, yeah. I'm sure your posts on your site are different than the posts that you're
Right.
posting on LinkedIn, right? You have a bit
Yep.
more. You can maybe LinkedIn. You kind of have to fall in line a bit to what people are expecting, whereas on your own site, you've got
Yep.
complete creative freedom. So
Yeah.
speaking of LinkedIn, actually, should we dive into the memes?
Yeah. Hashtag MOPS memes, if anyone wants to look at all of them after this episode.
And
Uh,
please add, if you have your own memes, please add, post them on LinkedIn using that hashtag, so they'll all be right
oh,
there.
there you
And
go. Yeah.
I don't want to be the only one posting on there. So um,
Yeah, and so if you're not following Jason, you should, and you should also follow Mott's memes. And you're also very gracious. Whenever I've asked you, can I borrow this or steal this meme for something, you're just like, take it.
yeah.
It's
Oh,
you're just providing this to the community, and it's great. I used this one actually in our Opstars workshop
good.
last week, and people got a kick out of it.
Yeah. So I'm like just a fan of the MOPS community, and I think you probably are as well. So yeah, anything I can do to make their presentations a little bit more enjoyable or their day more enjoyable, it's one of those things. It's funny because like you become just a fan of the different people, and it's funny how different you'll see these people's name picked, um, stick up somewhere, and you're like, oh, I know that person from
Mhm.
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really funny.
Yeah, and I think the the important side of this is that yes, they're funny, yes, they're creative and interesting, but also they're like they're important too, like this one.
Yeah.
So if you're not watching the video, I recommend you watch the video. But if you're just listening, this might be a little bit weird for you. But Jason, can you just explain kind of this meme? What
Sure.
so some people could kind of visualize it in their mind. But then also, I feel like this is an important one that maybe a MOPS person could share with their boss, right? If they need to get
Yeah.
headcount. So let's dive into it.
Yeah. So, and for anyone who is just listening, there's this truck pulling a 3-axle trailer, so a very huge trailer, and on top of it is one of those cozy coupes that a kid would have, like for a 2-year-old or something like that, and it's chained down. So, and on the trailer is the word Martech stack, and then over the cozy coupe is the size of the team to operate it. So, I think we fall in love with technology and different pieces that can help us do marketing better, but then also we kind of expect the same people to just learn every little piece of it, and it's always a lot to learn, especially when there's native integration. Sometimes those integrations still aren't all that user friendly. Sometimes you need to use some middleware to be able to integrate them, and one of the I think the misnomers that happens because it's called marketing automation and the word automation gets thrown around a lot. It seems like just connect it and it's all set to go. But actually, you need people to understand how to use it, and more importantly, uh, be able to fix it if something's not working. Because yeah, if you set it up and it's running automatically, that's great. But that's really the case. Normally, you need someone who knows how to troubleshoot and identify what the issue is. And uh, I think I forget who posted, but was talking about all the different hats that MOPS people wear. We're supposed to be not only know marketing automation, but also be data scientists and content writers and a whole bunch of different things. So um, I think a lot of businesses, they fall in love with the tech, but not so much the fact that they actually need people to run it.
Totally. And I mean, we at our workshop last week, I think about 80% it seemed like were kind of MOPS teams of one, or like really
Yep.
small MOPS teams. So you have everything you just talked about there with this ever expanding tech stack, ever expanding um, the breadth of skills that you need to not just manage the stack, but manage the whole marketing operations function. But then you're just like one person, and
Yep.
and you're
Yep.
just you can't you struggle to do anything strategic because you're just battling fires all day trying to get campaigns out the door.
Yep.
And your boss is probably like a demand gen director, so it's like they
Yep.
didn't come from MOPS, they don't understand it. So yeah, I think we used this one on the try and get more headcount section of the workshop, because I think it's so important for anyone in marketing operations to try and be at least communicating to their boss or their boss's boss or whoever's going to help potentially increase headcount of what everything that they're managing and everything that you just talked about, Jason, and then kind of their limited amount of human beings managing that.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, or one of the things that we talked about too is just how to build a tech stack that works for you and also like doesn't work against you. And we have a worksheet that we shared of just kind of doing analysis even before you even decide to purchase, and even giving that to people on your team, because a lot of the time some of these tools are just dumped on the
Yeah.
marketing ops team's laps, like, hey, we have this new event tool, go do this. Oh, we have this new other tool, okay, go do this. And marketing ops isn't even involved. So stepping ahead of that to really try and make sense of, because sometimes you find a client has like 3 ABM tools. It's like, why do we need three ABM
Yeah,
tools?
or like
Yeah.
multiple like online event tools
Yeah.
and webinars.
And so trying to step ahead of that and letting
Yeah.
MOPS get more control, but then having a framework for if they can't be part of all of it, like what's some of the things that you need to keep in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, and Scott Brinker's graphic that he does every year is really
Mhm.
terrifying.
Yeah.
There needs to be some consolidation because, yeah, I'm sure that many teams have tools that are overlapping in capabilities, like you just said. How many different tools do you need for ABM? Yeah, it's uh, it hurts me because I love it. That's probably actually my favorite part of the job is like integrating different pieces, but it's also sometimes I don't think it's necessary. And to your point, it should be much more thought out on what you're actually adding.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to what your point before around people hear the word automation and they just think it's just like it's just going to work by itself. It literally couldn't be the opposite,
Yep.
or
Yep.
could it be any
Yep.
more different than that?
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Should we dive onto that one?
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Do you want to try and explain this one?
Sure. So, and this one's pretty simple. So there's a guy drinking a glass of water, and there's another guy standing over him with a pitcher of water, pouring water in to his glass as he drinks. So, and I know you've had a few podcast episodes about this recently, where being overwhelmed with the type of work that comes in, and I think sometimes when we work in MOPS, and this is almost going back to the last point, is it's automated. How come it takes more than a day to have a campaign up and running? I thought you were just automating this. So I feel like, and sorry, the text is of the person pouring the water into the glass, request from marketing, and then the person drinking it is MOP. So um, again, sometimes I think maybe we make what we sound, uh, that we do sound a little too easy. And that's why you get all these requests and they expect a very quick turnaround because you're supposed to be able to push a magic button and have it done. So, and what I get from, just hearing other people talking about them being burned out, I thought this was very relatable and, a lot of people agreed when it was posted. So.
Do you have any thoughts on how MOPS can kind of combat that perception that it's automation and it should just run and it's easy?
I mean, I don't even know how much we should even try to sell it. I just think it's really important to have SLAs in place for how long something can be turned around. And it, I don't think anyone would ever do this, but I feel like you should give like each department like 2 or 3, whatever the number is, emergencies that they can use throughout a year, because emergencies do come up. So give them a set amount, and then they have to kind of plan that throughout the year. Again, I don't think anyone would ever implement that, but that kind of
I like that
stops you
though.
because obviously emergencies do come up where, okay, we weren't planning for this, but we have to get out the door. You can adjust resources, but it's one of those things. If you do that once, you start to be able to. They start to think you can do that all the time. So I think it's really important just to have those SLAs in place and then be able to stick by them too, to really question how important something is, because I think everyone, if they own it, to them it's important, but then to be able to figure that out in the global scheme of what you're trying to accomplish too, and have the courage to push back on that and let them know that they weren't in with the SLA and you'll get it done as soon as you can, but um, just really sticking to that.
Totally, yeah. Learning to say no, learning
Yep.
how to say no.
Yep.
Yeah,
and
which
and to make them convince you of the importance, like don't just uh, take their word for it, like let them know, if this campaign doesn't launch by tomorrow, what's the what's the consequences of that. So because sometimes if they have a hard time saying what those consequences are, then maybe it's not as important as they initially thought it was.
Yeah.
what do you
That's a good
think about
point.
this? Because I've always thought the people who gravitate to MOPS, we're kind of a bit of a people pleaser type like person. So that's why we end up in these sticky situations, because we always want to exceed expectations, and then the expectations become just like too hard to even,
Yeah.
manage. And like, do you agree with that, or do you think it's just the role that kind of ends up pushing us in that direction? It's making it hard to say no, or do you think it's a bit of both?
Well, no. So, and I think you actually hit it on the head there, that we are people pleasers. And I think sometimes we also fall into the automation trap, right? Because if you ask me how long something's going to take to build, if I don't actually go through and plan it all out, if you're saying, how long before we can get this nurture up and running? Let's say it's a 3 stream, 9 email nurture. So 3 emails per stream. Well, if you have the content, I can clone the emails pretty quickly and update it via tokens. Shouldn't take more than 2 hours. And then you get in and it's like, well, actually this took 10 hours because I wasn't planning on A, B, and C. So I think that's part of
Yeah.
it too. Is sometimes we think our own jobs are too easy, and especially with like being able to tokenize different pieces of content and clone it, it goes faster in our head. So that's why like we have a process to kind of pause, think things out, write it out. Because sometimes just taking that time to pause is going to save you a lot of time on the back end. So I think that's part of it too, is sometimes we fall into our own automation trap.
I think that's a
Yeah.
really good point.
And we talk about that a lot because I think I know the time that I learned it in my career, but being able to set expectations, because
Yeah.
it's even, I think sometimes we're like, oh, we want to tell them it's going to take, not very much time, so that they're very impressed by like how fast we
Yeah.
can do it. But really the better thing is give yourself some buffer, enough buffer so that you can actually deliver early, which means that
Yeah.
they're even more impressed that you got it delivered to them earlier than what you said. Because being late is always the thing
Yep.
where maybe you let someone down because they're planning things based on that. So
Exactly.
um, that's what we try and focus on, is like, don't try and just impress with how like and undersell, yourself. So
Yep.
just really give yourself enough time and buffer to deliver earlier.
Yeah. And that's a great point, because it is very much that way, right? You want to be like, oh well, it shouldn't take that long because you want them to be happy. But I think it's like you're really hurting yourself, because again, in future requests, they're going to think the same thing. So to your point, it'd be better
Exactly.
just to say, actually this takes a lot longer, and maybe they'll respect what you do a little bit more, understanding that it's not such a quick turnaround. So I think that's
Mhm.
very wise. But yeah, it's a tough thing to do, because I think we are people pleasers, and we think we can get things up and running pretty quick. So
Yeah, and we want to. I see a lot of most people. They kind of want to be. I don't mean this in a bad way, but kind of want to be the hero, right?
Mhm.
yeah.
Someone comes in, we need to get this out. Okay, I'm gonna work all night and get this done. And
Yeah.
there's a time and a place for that at different times in your career to kind of just like overextend yourself, but it's not a sustainable way to be.
Yeah.
And so yeah, making
And
sure even if you can exceed the SLA, just try sticking to it once in a while.
yeah.
Yeah, and it
And
doesn't always. Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I would say, and I think when you are in that mentality, you think, oh, the harder I work, the more I'm going to be rewarded. I'm going to get promoted and stuff like that. And it's actually proven that it's not really so much about your hard work. Part of that is that, but really it's people seeing the value of you. So if you're just stuck doing all these things, people are just going to see you as still kind of that
Yep.
market automation admin, just doing email, stuck in the weeds. But really, that's why we're trying to push all mops to like get ahead of that, like really save time for strategy, really selling your value, because that's actually what's proven
Yeah.
to help propel your career and get you elevated and get a promotion.
Totally.
Yeah, and there's a book that I love. It's called "Who Gets Promoted and Why," and it's basically
Mm.
saying the same thing, that a promotion isn't a reward for your past work; it's a bet on your future.
Mhm.
So it's
Mm.
to your point. It really doesn't matter if you did all these things well if you aren't showing that growth capability, right? Because and the other piece is don't become don't become irreplaceable, because
Yeah.
if you're so good at your job that they can't replace you, you can't move up, because then they have to find someone to take your job that you're currently doing. So you can't go to a new job. So I really like that, because yeah, you need to be able to kind of show how you can fit into the next role that you want to grow into.
Those two quotes are really good. What was the book called again? Just so people
Uh,
can find it.
it's I believe it's Who Gets Promoted and Why.
Okay. Yeah. No, that was a really, really good point. Um, cool. Should we move on to the next one?
Yeah.
All right. This one,
One of the
I'm
first
sure.
ones. So,
So,
so it's a,
so was this one of your first memes then? Was it?
I
Or
don't know if it was so 3 months ago. So that would have been what? That would have been July. So I guess I was already fairly into, because I think I started in January or February. So I guess it wasn't that. Seems like a while ago when you're making these every day.
yeah.
So I guess this was in July-ish, somewhere in there. So it's the Flex Seal guy, and hopefully you know what he looks like. But it's where he takes the Flex Seal tape. There's a big jug of water, not a jug of water, but like a container of water that's leaking. and he just takes the Flex Seal tape and puts it over the hole, and problem sealed. So the premise of this meme is, this is something that's super simple, even though it's actually not a very good fix if you have a hole that's leaking water. It may work in the commercial, but it's also not this easy and probably doesn't work that long. So the the writing over the guy with the Flex Seal guy is marketers. The leaking water is not enough NQLs, and then when he's slamming his hand to fill the hole, it says lower qualification threshold. So this is something, and I'm sure anyone who's worked in MOPS has probably seen this at one time or the other, unless you may be just getting started. But um, there's this problem of not enough leads are getting through to the sales team, and then you realize, well, it's because the criteria to become an MQL is too high. So we're just going to lower that. Instead of having a score of 100, we're just going to knock it down to 70, which isn't very useful. I mean, you may get more leads, but I'm guessing that your conversion rate isn't going to go up. And it's just kind of funny because it's like, instead of either finding better leads, or B, doing a better job at marketing the leads you have, it's just kind of funny. But you see it all the time where it becomes a number game, and you want to be able to say that, well, we pushed this amount of leads. Why isn't sales closing them? And it's just kind of a funny solution.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just talking about something similar to this yesterday because in one of my past roles, we had a new like head of marketing who just took over SDR, and he was like, we need more MQL. So he's somehow convinced that we just didn't use lead scoring anymore. And they just turned it off. Like I was like, even beyond like outside of my MOPS team. And so the next day we were just like, what do we do? Like our whole world was turned upside down because they just made that quick change. And even then, like you don't think about the other impact as well on like the marketer side or campaign members are like, well, we kind of use this metric to get it early,
Mhm.
like sent, metric on how well our campaigns are doing for bringing just people through the door. And so then my whole team had to scramble for a week to try and now come up with this new metric of what's a target and not a target. So then we're at least able to see, upfront, like, are we bringing in the right people?
Yeah.
And it was just like caused so much havoc. And then of course, that lasted a few weeks, maybe even a month, and then we were back to putting in our scoring model again. So to your point, it may seem like a good solution at first, but it's not sustainable and doesn't scale. And
Yeah.
and that's like the two things that I think for any MOPS person when they're about to do something, like, can this scale? Is this just also a symptom of just a bigger problem, like you said,
Right.
and having that conversation with the whole marketing team to figure out what the plan should be instead of just this quick fix.
Yep.
So what's your opinion on MQLs? I feel like they're a bit of a dirty word these days.
Yeah. So, well, and in fact, I have one of the things that I question too is the majority of like lead scoring, because I think a lot of it is uh, just very arbitrary, right? Like sometimes
Yeah.
it's, if you're tracking every web page or every email open and trying to, we make an inference that uh, every email open is valuable, and that, oh, they really love our content, right? But I say it all the time where sometimes I'll open an email just to clear from my push notification. So to
Mhm.
me, I may look really qualified in someone's database, even though I might not actually even know who they are, aside from the fact that I have to clear their email notifications all the time. So um, I mean, I think lead scoring has its place, but I think we try to assign values to everything, and I think that's just where it gets very tricky. And we should be able to identify really the more important criteria and the really high value um, types of activities that really move someone along, instead of trying to have it be this sum of all uh, disparate activities.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
would you be more of an advocate for only MQLing something like a demo request or a contact us, and then everything else you can have a score and prioritize them, but they're not going to be, handed over to sales at that point?
Yeah, and I think it would kind of depend on the company, but I think
Right.
salespeople, their time is valuable, and they shouldn't be spending time just on every lead that comes through. So, going to this image here, right, that you can send them a lot of leads, but wouldn't you rather just have them be with people that are really interested? Because that should be marketing's job, is to find these people. And if they aren't interested, to educate them to how
Mhm.
this can benefit them to the point that they want to reach out. So I would lean more towards that way, right? Either a
Mhm.
contact us or a demo request, something along those lines. Um, like I said, without knowing everyone's situation, maybe some people are really successful with being able to score individual activities, but I think, um, especially just the way I think we do business nowadays, we're very much self-qualifying.
Hmm.
And if the sales team still wants to have people that are doing cold calling, I think that's actually great. It's not something I would ever succeed at, but there's some people that are very good. Then they can do that. But otherwise, I feel like this is what we're doing now is just a glorified form of cold calling, because we're saying these people are qualified when they really haven't shown any indication that they actually are, aside from they're doing activities we can track.
Totally. And
Yeah.
then sales gets pissed off because they're like,
Yep.
look at all these, you're calling them marketing
Yep.
qualified, and like
Yep.
I'm converting like 1% of these.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't actually thought about this until now, but it kind of goes back to the people pleaser, right? We want to tell sales, like, look at all these leads we're
Right.
Mhm.
generating. Where wouldn't it just be better to say, spend your time with these we have a high probability of closing. So I actually hadn't thought of that till now, but it might go back to the people pleaser
Yeah.
type of mindset.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot goes back to that, right?
Yeah.
Wanting to look good, wanting to make people happy, and
Yep.
then all of the symptoms
Yep.
kind of come out of that.
But
Yeah,
then
and I
you
think
end.
some yeah, I think sometimes also too dashboards for some people are just
Yeah.
looking at volume when they really should just be kind of focused more on conversion rates and like
Mhm.
the pipeline revenue. So when people are just looking at a number going up, 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 you get kind of like trained and addicted to doing that. And so
What gets measured gets managed.
Yeah.
exactly. And so like, but really, like you said, if you wanted your conversion rate go up, you'd be focused more on
Hmm.
maybe generating fewer MQLs, and really just sending over the ones that are more qualified. And the crazy thing too is what you see a lot is people are like rely so much on their sales development team to do
Yeah.
like qualification, but really they're like trying to nurture someone. But most
Mhm.
like SDRs are not even in position where they can really fully nurture people. And then the marketing team kind of abandons their nurture program or
Hmm.
what they put into the nurture and just focused on just doing
Yep.
these email blast campaigns that they think are going to generate MQLs.
Yeah.
Like that warp of like is just going to
And
cause
they pass it over to
problems.
sales, and sales just adds, thousands of people into
Yeah.
into their outreach or sales loft, and
Mhm.
starts kind of just like, because they can't keep up with how many, and they know that they're not going to convert, so they end up just
Yeah.
unpersonalized, just kind of spamming them.
Yeah. And so I think if we as marketers or, even MOPS, I think you can stand up to like the marketing team and be like, I'm seeing this issue here. Maybe we
Yeah.
should focus more on doing this. And I think sometimes MOPS people don't feel like they have the right or like they don't have the position to do that. But really sometimes campaign managers or people who are in those roles are just looking for guidance. And we're like the people on the ground, right? Like we're seeing everything that's going on. We're looking at the data. And so we're best suited to to give those
Yep.
give
Hmm.
that feedback and just reminding them of those things because I think people can be tied to a number and just feel like
Yep.
they turn into these like bad habits to get there. And so MOPS like really feel like you can maybe make those uh you know the recommendations to your team. Don't feel like you
Yep.
you don't have a
Yep.
voice to do that.
Yeah. And I think too, we work in something that changes pretty quickly, and a lot of people that might be on a marketing team are using some legacy best practices too, and they might be
Totally.
really tied to them. So to your point, yeah, we need to do a much better job of educating and saying, well, here's what's really important, and here's the implications of you know changing and that type of thing. So yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't forget we're in a lot. I mean, obviously, with the whole rise of revenue ops and everything, it might be a different
Yep.
story. But if we're marketing ops, we still got to wear a marketing hat and
Hmm.
have ownership over what's going on in marketing. We can't just be you're in the tools all day, not caring about really what's happening from a marketing point of view or like the customer experience.
Or kind of what we talk about a lot too is like a business mindset. So really, if you're just not so focused on like tech and how it works and just like that, really thinking about the whole business, because
Yeah.
that's going to be what keeps your job, it's going to be
Yep.
what keeps that business going. And so focusing there, and I think knowing all parts of marketing, or knowing how marketing works, and flexing that creative part of
Yeah.
your mind that you so much have been doing so far is an important thing to do.
Yeah. And going back to the people pleaser one more time is right. If we get a request that says, "Can you do this?" the normal answer is yes, because we can do almost anything. So the better answer is, or the better question is, should we do this?
Yep.
Because right, almost anything is doable, but should you be doing it?
I think that's a perfect way to end this and wrap this up.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was awesome to have you on, Jason. And for everyone who's listening, where can they find you, or where should they look to see some of your memes?
Sure. So I'm on LinkedIn. Jason, last name is Raisleger. And then you can always go to mopsmemes.com. I usually I post them on LinkedIn first, and then about every month I'll put what I posted the last month on LinkedIn onto my website. So go to mopsmemes.com. Feel free to use anytime you want. Don't even need to give credit. I mean, I always appreciate it, but my main goal is that people are using these memes. So
cool. Well, thank you very much for your contribution to the MOPS community. I'm going to continue using your memes and
awesome.
look forward to seeing more.
Yeah.
All right. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah. We'll see everyone on the next episode of Forward Thinking. Have a good one.
This is Charlie. So if you liked what you heard, hit like on the platform where you watch this. Also, leave a review. Honestly, we would really, really appreciate it. You can also subscribe where you listen to your podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or even YouTube. And make sure you subscribe to our newsletter, which is packed full of exclusive content, updates for events or courses that we might be doing, all designed to elevate your marketing operations and B2B strategy. See you next time on Forward and Forward It On.